Hi everyone, Uncle Nacki here. Today I wanted to talk about two different non-sports card sets. These are both vintage sets from the 1909 to 1911 area, similar to like the T205s, T206s, and these are there's actually two different sets here. One is known as the T29 Animal series, and the other one I'm going to talk about is the T30 Arctic Scenes. In my opinion, the Animal series is probably a much more fun set if you're trying to decide on one or the other, just because of the difference in cards and the different variations to actually look for. I'm going to start with the T30 Arctic Scenes cards. This set here, it's a 25 card set, so there's not a whole lot of cards to go after when completing the set. And as far as the card backs, there's only two variations. Both of them are Hassan cigarettes. The only variations on them would be the factory numbers on the bottom. You have factory 30s and factory 649s. So if you wanted to put together, say, a master set, you'd have to get one of each of those for each of these cards. So you'd have a 50 card master set with these. And other than that, there's not a whole lot of other things to look for on this particular set, unless you really wanted to get into some extreme details, which are very hard to tell and distinguish. There's three different colors, whether you want to call them variations or not. It's really hard to say. There's black ink only. Then there's another one that's more on the green side, and then there's one that kind of falls right in the middle, kind of like an army type green, where it's not really green and it's not really black, but it's, if you mix the two together, it's the color you'd get. And honestly, with these cards I have here, you can see some different color variations on them, but it's so minor. I wouldn't even know how to separate these into different piles for the colors. The one thing I could try is putting them under, say, an LED light. Sometimes that brings out certain colors a little bit better, but I just haven't gotten the chance to do that. So, mainly it's just the different factory numbers, factory 30, factory 649. All the cards in this series, they have a descriptive back, which basically means is there's a description on the back side of the card that shares room with the advertisement also. In some other, card sets, they don't have that. Some of them they do. Some of it's split, 50-50. But other than that, that's, really all there is to the Arctic set. And, this was at a time when there was still a lot of exploring going on. And, so it kind of made the reason for this particular set, made it kind of popular. Unfortunately, like I said, there's only 25 cards of the set, and I have 33 cards here, and out of the 33, I have 19 that are different. And the condition is all over the place because these are, coming from, multiple collections. I'll get a collection, and sometimes I'll get one or two cards, and I put it, to the side, and then I'll get a different collection, and the same thing happens. And some collections are better than others, so the conditions are, nicer than others. But, to give you an idea of some of them, it's all a matter of, how picky you want your cards to be. Some of them are in really rough shape. This one has multiple creases, and you know, actual tears and, you know, so, but still a nice set. You know, if you were to collect even a set of these in this particular condition and you were to put them in some 9-pocket pages and, you know, they weren't going to really be handled after that, you know, it's still a collectible set. You know, I wouldn't recommend, you know, handling these often. You know, if you were to collect something like this, at least get them in a top loader. I don't have them in anything right now just because, you know, they were mixed in with other cards, and I just happened to pull these out. So, you know, like I said, there's 25 different designs. They're all Arctic related. So you got like the Northern Lights, and just you know, all different types of scenes from that particular time period that, you know, the explorers, you know, may have come across. Some of the cards have some paper loss in the back. That's just because there's, you know, some collections, you know, had these cards maybe in a scrapbook. So like I said, conditions all over the place when it comes to certain cards, and it's just a matter of deciding, you know, what you want to collect, how you want to collect it, you know, and to what extent you're okay with. You know, some people don't care too much about the back of the card. But with this particular series, because it, you know, has a description of the card front, you know, the back is, you know, in this case, probably just as important. So, you know, if I was collecting this set, I would probably look for cards that had clean front and back surfaces with no paper loss, just for that reason. As long as you can, like I said, make out the actual description. You know, if there's a chunk of paper missing, you know, right in the middle, it takes away from the card, you know, completely. Even though you may have, you know, the front looking perfect. And like I said, some of them are just, you can kind of tell that which ones came from what collections, just because they kind of share the same characteristics in condition. But then you have other ones that are, you know, overall decent, you know, no major creasing, you know, just normal corner wear, and you know, just overall you know, a decent card. This one looks like it's just got maybe some offset type ink on it, but you know, me personally, this is probably like something I would, if I was to collect it, I'd probably go after cards that look similar to this. You know, one crease here and there wouldn't be too big of a deal if it wasn't a crease that actually, say, broke the paper. You know, like this card here has got some creasing. It you know, this crease right here, if you look at it at the angle, you can see it in the light. But if you look at it straight on, you almost can't see it because it really didn't break the paper, and that's kind of like what I mean by that. And if you look at the crease here, you can see it in the light, and then when you look at it straight, you can see that there's actually some color missing. And, you know, so that's more of like a crease that actually broke the surface of the paper. But, you know, it's not like a crease that's straight through where it actually makes the card brittle. So, like I said, it's just a matter of preference. You know, like for a T206, I would, you know, buy this condition all the time. It wouldn't bother me at all. But, you know, some of these non-sports cards, you know, the collections are, you know, some of them are actually pretty difficult to assemble, but you can still do it fairly cheap. You know, it may take a little bit of time to, you know, search cards out in, say, a condition like this where you don't have any visible creases and just some minor corner wear. But you can see, like on this one, it's got some, paper loss in the corners from being in a scrapbook. So sometimes you get that nice clean front with some, back damage. But then again, it's just a matter of, if you pick a card, say, well, that's a bad example, that's got, back damage also, but sometimes you could have a card that's in rough shape, but, no paper loss. And then if you just compare the two and you ask yourself, which one would you rather have, as part of your collection, this one with just some paper loss in the corners and it doesn't affect the actual description, I'd probably, go after probably this card over the other one. In this case, it's like I said, it's a bad example because the back of this is just, it's in rough shape. Some of this may be able to get, soaked off or whatever, but I don't do that kind of stuff. I don't have any experience in some of that. There's some collectors out there that actually are pretty good at doing that, where they soak, cards out of scrapbooks and things like that. This card here, it's got some, creasing, but like I said, on the back, overall, it's just a clean back. So it's all a matter of, what you're comfortable collecting, and then also price. Price always matters too. The last thing you want to do is sink a ton of money into something that may not, you may not make a huge profit on in the future. These aren't as popular as, say, like the baseball card series cards. So, when it comes time to sell these, it may be a little bit more difficult to find a buyer. But surprisingly, the non-sports cards market, especially for the vintage, is, it's gaining popularity. And the other nice thing about these cards is it's kind of like like an entry level or a doorway into, say, going after the T206 set. You may not be comfortable at first with, say, vintage cards or cards of this time period, but if you were to get into a set like this where you can pick up cards for a couple dollars a piece and you kind of get a feel for it, and you know what to expect, and you get used to the way the gloss is on the paper and the way the colors are and the way the ink is on the back and just the overall feel of the card. That's a good way to, kind of start yourself into, vintage collecting and what to expect. You don't really want to do that with, say, a $30 or $40 card, and you don't really know what you're getting into. Once you hold a card of this particular condition in your hand, you can kind of decide if this is okay with you, say, for T206s. Now, if you were holding this card in your hand and you're only used to, like the new stuff with sharp corners and, PSA 10 all the time, it's going to take some getting used to. So, you may not, get into you may not accept the way these are as far as value, or not value, but in grade as easily. You will over time, because you'll actually learn to accept the fact that, with vintage cards comes grading issues, where things just don't grade as high as, the new stuff. And the other thing is, you get cards with writing on the back and pinholes sometimes, and that's just kind of comes with the territory when it comes to the vintage. You you get things, you find stuff all over the place, and then you go from, a card like that to a card like this that, is overall, decent, but again, it's decent because it was in a scrapbook, and when they removed it from the scrapbook, it got some paper loss. This isn't too bad. Sometimes they put the glue right in the center, so when they're removed, it wipes out the whole center of the back of the card. But overall, like I said, it's a nice set. Especially if it's something you're looking to do to get into for the first time in the vintage, or if you're you collect vintage cards a lot and you just need a break from, say, the expensive T206s and some of the others, baseball card series out there. It's nice to be able to pick up, say, a small collection of these cards for about the same price as one baseball card. And they're technically, they're from the same time period with a lot of the same cigarette advertisements on the back, and they just overall are identical, except for the topic. They were printed the same kind of way. They used a lot of the same colors of inks. So like I said, overall, it's just a nice way to get into the vintage area if you haven't already. I always tell everyone that, there's always a lot to learn, but it's nothing to be afraid of. The quicker you get into vintage, the better off you'll be. That's one of my regrets, that I didn't get into it sooner, and the only reason why I didn't get into the vintage collecting sooner is, honestly, I was afraid of it. There was too many unknowns for me. When I started collecting, there wasn't the internet, so it was very different. You really didn't have a whole lot to go on. You had your basic, some of the baseball card magazines, and they kind of went over some of the basics of, say, a T206 set, but they didn't go into any details, and there really wasn't a whole lot of information out there for that. And there was only, you go to a show and there would only be 2 or 3 dealers with those particular cards, and there were always the same guys kind of hanging around those tables, and it was just a little just didn't seem too inviting, or too comfortable of an environment. It was almost as if I belonged where all the upper deck stuff and all that kind of new shiny stuff at the time period was just coming out. But now I look back and I wish I kind of stayed away from all the shiny stuff, and I just kind of worked my way in between all those guys and started learning what the vintage was all about. I would have can't imagine where I would be at this time period, as far as my collection. Even though I got a really late start, I've got a decent collection, but I just can't imagine if I got even an earlier start and learned so much more earlier on. So that's why I kind of make these videos, and I encourage everybody to get into vintage, even if it's not baseball related, and and I also encourage you to not be afraid of anything. All that's going to do is just waste time that you could be spending learning and collecting something about all these different sets. So these cards here, unfortunately I only have 2 of them. This is from the T29 Animals series, And this set has 80 different cards in it, so there's a big difference between these two sets. The 80 card set, though, is actually broken up into two 40 card sets. Some people don't realize that it's actually, two individual sets, but it's basically thought of as the 80 card set. And the differences between those, I'm going to tell you. These cards here are actually from the Series 1 part of the set. And the Series 1s, the way you can tell is the backs are just have the advertisement for the cigarette brand only. They don't talk about any descriptions of the card front, such as the Arctic ones. They have that descriptive section, and then they have the advertisement on the bottom. So these here with no description and just the advertisement, these were from Series 1. And Series 1 cards came out around the summer and fall of 1909. And there were 40 cards, 40 different fronts, and on those cards you could find the different factory numbers. You could find factory 30 and factory 649. There was also a blank back, completely blank, 100% blank, nothing on it, with the same card fronts, and they actually had a very faint printing right on the white border, right on the bottom of the card, and it was said factory 25. Those are very difficult to come by. And as far as I know, they're only in that first series of 40. I haven't seen too many of them, so they may actually follow into the second set of 40 cards, but I'm not 100% certain. The only ones I've seen are only in the first series of cards, and those are actually factory 25s. But a majority of the cards you're going to find are going to be factory 30 and factory 649. And like I said, the first 40 card series is just the advertising back for the cigarettes. The second 40 cards they came out actually the end of 2009, early 2010, and they'd have a similar back like this, where they would have this descriptive section about the animal on the front side, and then they'd have the advertisement on the back. And then you'd have the factory 30 and factory 649 factory differences if you wanted to go, say, after a master set. So in this particular card set, it being an 80 card set, factory 30 and factory 649 are really the two main ones. I wouldn't consider the blank backs as actually part of the set. I guess if you're going after a master set, all different combinations matter, but it's something that I wouldn't spend a lot of time focusing on because they are difficult. The other thing about these cards that makes them interesting is there were a lot of other companies in that time period that used the same card front designs, and then they used their own advertisement backs. The most popular that actually did that was by British American Tobacco, and the brand of the cigarettes was Crosscut brand. So a lot of times you'll look these up, T29, and you'll see advertisements for Crosscut. Technically, those aren't T29s because they're not part of the American Tobacco Company sets. Those are from the British American Tobacco. I'm sure they have their own classification number, but they're not T29s. Now, if like I said, if you're collecting a master set, you may want to, branch out into some of those other companies that use the same card fronts, just because they're literally identical on the front side. They're just different on the backs. So there were like 3 or 4 different companies that use this particular design. So that's why, out of these two sets, the T29s are probably my pick of the two if I was to collect them. Just because, I like having lots of options, and because I'm a T206 collector and I'm a front back collector, I like all those different variations and, different numbers and colors and advertisements and, all that kind of stuff. So, that's what makes this particular set, be my pick, as far as, say, if I had to make a decision of which one of the two to collect. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else I'm, leaving out. Like I said, the factory 25s, like I said, it's going to be very hard to see. It almost kind of blends right into the white back, border of the card, and then the back has absolutely nothing on it, completely blank. And those are very hard to come by, and I don't know if anybody's even attempted to put a set of those together. And like I said, I don't know if a set of those is only 40 cards from the Series 1, from the early series release, or if it actually goes into the Series 2. I just haven't seen enough of them to be able to tell whether or not any of the second series ones are out there. If one shows up, then obviously all 80 cards would be possible. But at this particular moment, I'm going to say only the 40 cards are possible with the blank backs. And, there's nothing wrong with adding that to a master's set. So, you would basically have, let's see, 100. So it would be a 200 card master set, because you would have 80 649s, 80 factory 30s, and 40 factory 25s. So you have 200 cards total, and then like I said, you got some other companies that use the same design, and you could branch out from there if you really wanted to, say, pick a non-sports card type of set and really focus on it. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, and you could probably put together a pretty impressive collection at a decent price, and it would be basically just as rare as a lot of the baseball related cards. So that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel and you like these kinds of videos, definitely subscribe. It helps encourage me to make additional videos. If you know anything about these particular cards that I may have left out, you can definitely leave some information in the comments section, and this way other collectors that may click on this video and read the comments, they will also learn some stuff. I'm in no way an expert on these particular cards. I don't know everything. So T206s, maybe I am, but not these. But these are definitely fun cards to collect. So like I said, if you got any questions, comments, or anything like that, leave them in the comments section. And thank you for spending some time with me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.